In this hybrid environment that we are all a part of, physical space has been taking on a little bit of a different meaning. Because we do have some employees who are now working from home, who are working from different environments, not in the physical space. So what do? How do we create a great experience for employees who are not in the office? Well, the challenge is, how do we make them still feel like our values are there? How do we, for example, mental health is a big challenge, a big struggle for a lot of employees who are working in a hybrid environment. Dealing with loneliness, trying to figure out how do we set up our spaces at home so that we can still be productive and engaged? How do we set up our spaces so that we can still do a good job of engaging and interacting with our customers or with our partners or with our employees? So in this case, what that means is that you become a bit of a coach on how to utilize space. So it's actually even harder to create those great experiences when we think about the physical environment, because not only do you have the actual space where employees are showing up, where customers are showing up, but you now also need to think about the space in terms of the employee's home. So what guidance can you give? What feedback can you give? What suggestions can you give? What tools, what resources can you give to your employees to help make sure that their space at home is still being used in a way that allows them to be productive and engaged and also helps you? And you have to remember that the physical space is the symbol of your organization. And when you leave here, ask yourself, go over your values. Share the values with your team. Have a conversation about it and say, do we feel these values? If you're an employee who comes into a branch, do you feel these values? If you're an employee who's working from home, do you feel these values? Why or why not? The second environment, and by the way, physical space, 30% of the overall employee experience. 30% of the overall employee experience is about physical space. Second environment is technology.
I learned something absolutely insane today. 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed to it. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It'll take you just 1 second and it helps the channel quite a bit. You'll also get access to new videos when they are released. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the content.
And I think we've all felt the power of technology over the past few years, because if it wasn't for technology, I think a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses would have struggled much more than they have now. Technology is the central nervous system of any organization. Central nervous system of any organization. Now, one of the things that I always find fascinating when we think about technology is that we assume that technology is always an IT thing. You have a technology problem? It's an IT thing. Don't come to me. I'm not an IT. Go talk to them. But what happens when technology starts to break down at your company? What happens if you have a customer who is frustrated because they're not able to do something? What happens if you have an employee who's trying to do something and isn't able to because of technology? Do you think they care about IT? What starts to happen when we have a technology breakdown is we get a human reaction. Like, we get a visceral reaction. We get upset, we get frustrated, we get disengaged, we get angry. IT is not a technology thing, it is a human thing. When technology breaks down, it is a human thing, not a technology thing. Now, one of the fascinating things that I have found over at least the past 2 years or so is that a lot of the conversation has moved away from automating jobs and replacing humans to how do we bring humanity back into the organization. Now, the reality is that when we think about technology and automation, we need to use it as a way to make our organization more human, not less human. One good example actually comes from Accenture. And I remember I was interviewing their chief leadership and people officer a while ago. And she was telling me this story about how they automated 17,000 jobs. And I thought, wow, it's got to be tough on the people. And she said, no, you don't understand. We automated the jobs, not the people. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, the 17,000 the jobs that we automated were all in finance. These were number crunchers. These were people who were calculating things, who were creating spreadsheets. We have bots to do that now. They do it like that. So what we did instead is we upskilled those employees, and we taught them to be more like strategic advisors to our customers, more like strategic advisors to our clients. Help them understand what the numbers mean. Help them understand what decisions they should be taking based on the numbers that they're seeing. So this upskilling component is an important piece when we think about technology. Right? How do we make the organization more human, not less human? And sure, a lot of those routine jobs, the mundane tasks will go to technology, but how do we upskill the people? How do we create a place for those people to still serve our customers, to still help the organization as a whole? So technology, 30% of the overall experience. These are the tools, the resources, the hardware, the software, the apps, all the things that your people are using to get work done. And again, this is the central nervous system of your organization. The last environment is corporate culture. Corporate culture. And there are a lot of different ways that we use to think about and define what corporate culture is and what it means. And we've heard things like, it's what happens when the manager leaves the room. I like to think of corporate culture as the side effects of working for your company. Corporate culture is the side effects of working for your company. What do I mean? So when I was working on my book on employee experience years ago, I was taking a break and I was watching a show on TV. And in the middle of the show, there was a commercial that came on for a prescription drug. And after the commercial, they got to the side effects. Side effects include nausea, weight gain, skin discoloration, hair loss, bleeding from the eyes. And I thought, who in their right mind is going to take this kind of a prescription drug? But then I realized that most people in the world work for organizations that have those exact same side effects. Where from prolonged exposure, you argue with your spouse, you gain weight, you lose your hair, bleeding from the eyes. We've all been to those meetings. So if we're not willing to experience the side effects of the drug, why are we willing to subject ourselves to work for an organization that has those exact same side effects? And I'll never forget, a couple years ago, I went to go speak to a large financial institution who will remain nameless. And I was sitting with a lot of their executive team members. And I asked them a fun question. I said, if I could give you a corporate culture pill, where by taking it right now, you would experience all the side effects of working for your company, both the good and the bad, how many of you in this room would honestly be willing to take that corporate culture pill? From all the executives in the room, not a single hand went up. And I asked them, I said, how can you expect your people to swallow the corporate culture pill? How can you expect your people to be engaged, to want to show up to work each day, to help your customers, when you, as the leaders of the organization, are not willing to swallow the corporate culture pill yourself? This is the important role that all of you in this room play. You have to swallow that corporate culture pill first before you ask anybody else to do it. And by the way, the side effects of working for your company don't have to be bad. The side effects can also be great. A sense of purpose, meaning, growth, curiosity, being able to conquer challenges and obstacles. The side effects of working for your company can be great. They don't have to be bad. So ask yourself, are you willing to swallow that corporate culture pill? One of the reasons why I got into this space in general, why I started speaking, why I started talking about leadership and employee experience to begin with, is because I never had good jobs working for organizations. Years ago when I was in school, I had a terrible grade point average. In high school, my GPA was a 2.7. I then went to community college. I bumped it up to a whopping 2.8. And then I went to the University of California, Santa Cruz, and I double majored in economics and psychology. And I was so excited to join the corporate world. I thought, I'm going to make an impact, I'm going to make a difference, this is my last chance, I'm just going to crush it in school, and then I'm going to give everything I have to an organization, I'm going to one day go get an MBA, climb that corporate ladder, and then maybe become like the CMO of an organization. So I did well in college, and I start work at this organization in LA, downtown LA. Again, will remain nameless. And when I interviewed there, I was told that I was going to be doing all these amazing things. I was going to be meeting with executives and business leaders and entrepreneurs. I was going to feel that sense of purpose and meaning, the usual story. And I thought, wow, this is great. So I took the job. I had an hour-and-a-half commute to work and an hour-and-a-half commute back from work every day. 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week driving. But I took the job because I was sold on the story. A couple months into my job, I'm doing data entry, I'm doing cold calling, I'm doing PowerPoint presentations. And one day, the CEO comes out of his beautiful corner office. And he says, Jacob, get over here. I got a really important project for you. I got excited. I ran over to him and I said, what is it? Right? In my mind, I'm thinking, all right, my time has come, paid my dues, the usual stuff. And he's like, oh man, I am late for a meeting. I need you to go run down to Starbucks and get me a latte. And he takes out his wallet, gives me a $10 bill, says, go. In my mind, I'm thinking like, I hope this latte burns your face off. But of course I said, oh sure, I would love to get you that latte. And that was one of the last full-time jobs I ever had working for anybody else, over 15 years ago. Now contrast this story to one that's oftentimes told about when President Kennedy went to go visit the NASA Space Center. And as the story goes, he's doing a tour of the Space Center and he sees a man walking down the hall with a broom and a bucket. President Kennedy goes over to the man and he says, hi, I'm President Kennedy, what do you do here? And the man with the broom and bucket says, I helped put a man on the moon. He didn't say I sweep the bathroom floors. He didn't say I restock paper towels. He said, I helped put a man on the moon. That is a very different type of corporate culture than the one that I grew up in. So corporate culture, the side effects of working for your organization. And this is why I say that all of you in this room are in HR. And when I say that, I mean capital A. Like now more than ever, you need to think of yourselves in HR, especially because we're seeing this challenge around mental health. I know this is a very uncomfortable topic, especially for a lot of leaders, but leaders really are like the first responders when it comes to mental health. Because a lot of people are having a hard time getting access to mental health and resources, so who are the first people that they come to? Leaders. They come to you. They tell you their frustrations, their challenges, their dreams, if they're depressed with something, if they're anxious about something. And what do most leaders do? We say, oh, you should go talk to that person. Right? Make an appointment in a week or two, maybe you can get in touch with someone. So one of the things that all of you in this room need to do is understand your employees as human beings, not just as workers. Understand the people who work for you as human beings, not just as workers. So corporate culture, again, this is 40% of the overall employee experience. And unlike the other two environments, this isn't one that you can see or touch or taste or breathe in. Corporate culture is the one that you feel. And that now more than ever is important. How do employees feel working for you? And how do you create experiences for them?